In my preparation for Road America this week, I got curious. I just wanted to see how much of a difference are these paid setups making? How much faster am I with them versus, say, the fixed setup? Well, we're going to do that today by loading into a session here on iRacing. Let's take a look at what we're working with. We're just going to do a test session here at Road America with the Aston GT3. The weather is set to static, so that way nothing will change as far as the weather, and we get a very straightforward session where we know if we are getting faster, it's because of us. It's not necessarily because the temperature got cooler, not because the cloud cover increased or decreased or what have you, or the wind. So let's go ahead and load in here. We're going to do two 10-lap stints with the fixed setup and then with the paid setup to see what the difference is. All right, perfect. So I do have the fixed setup loaded here. We're going to go ahead and give it a go. While we're on our outlap here, one of the main features of this test is to see, again, just how much of a difference does a paid setup make? Like, is there value in it? And I am a paid setup merchant. Like, I don't care who knows it. It's actually very beneficial to me to have paid setups because there are a lot of things I like to race and I don't have the time to test them. Also, another huge feature of paid setups, or these setup shops in most cases, is that you're going to get access to certain data and telemetry from these drivers, and that's worth quite a bit on its own. The setups are very valuable, obviously, but when you couple it with quality telemetry from top drivers, you definitely learn a few things about how the cars are supposed to be driven in the sim, and I think that makes a big difference as well, because you may be doing something completely wrong. The setup is asking to be driven a certain way and you're doing it the wrong way. Oh no, we've already spun it. We'll start over. I just don't want it to affect the test. So after that spin, I just reset because I didn't want to have too many variables at play. I want to try to limit them. Or, again, breaking loose. Yeah, it seems like my braking is not very good right now. We got to get used to it, and then we'll have fewer of those moments. But for right now, what's happening is I'm braking, and then I'm realizing I don't need that much brake, or I'm making it to the corner and I need to release the brake so I can start turning, and the weight transfer is becoming a little too much. Carrying too much speed into the corner and just about to spin out because of it. Alright, so we're coming to the end of our first time lap. We did have a spin, I reset. Just want to make sure I don't have too many variables laying around. There's our first baseline lap. It's a 204.9. It was invalid. It wasn't perfect. But at least that gets us started with the fixed setup. Now, I'm not touching anything, not even brake bias. Even though you can edit that, I think it's probably fine at default. So we'll give it a bunch of laps here just to see what we can do to get this time down as low as it can go. And then we'll switch over to one of my paid setups. Pretty stable through the carousel, not a problem there. Then through the kink as well, perfectly flat, nothing to worry about. Like, the fixed setup handles quite well. Oh man, too much throttle. Coupled with the wheel input. Alright, well, up until that moment, we were looking quite good. Alright then, so completing lap 2. 204.0, but with that mistake, we lost quite a bit of time. Once again, through the carousel, it feels perfectly balanced. But one thing that I've always noticed over the years when it comes to fixed setups, and this is whether it's road or if it's oval, I've always noticed that they tend to have a really good balance on entry and the center or the apex of the corner. But then oftentimes they have a tendency to be what I call push loose, or that understeer that turns into understeer. I don't know if that makes sense. Of course, it doesn't make any sense. The understeer that turns into oversteer is what I meant, and I do believe iRacing refers to this as push oversteer. A lot of wheel input, and then the rear will start to come around. I consider that push loose. So, anyways, 203.3. The braking zone is just beating me up. I am not getting the car to slow down like I want it to at all. And that corner's been giving me troubles as well, but that time, not even a hint of difficulty. Carousel, yet again, always tricky to measure out the right amount of throttle inputs, but very smooth. And this time does not break free, so this will be a good lap then. Through the final corner, so this is going to be a very good representative time. Alright, so unfortunately we followed up that personal best with a dud, which means I can try to see if this is flat out, this left-hand bend, without risking anything. And yeah, oh, that was perfectly easy. So I mean, this fixed setup is stable. It's very stable, actually. And with our optimal being a 202.1, there's decent pace in this, from what I can tell. It's only lap 5, though, so we'll keep going. But I bet you we can get this down into the 201s, maybe mid 201s with the fixed setup. There's just a ton of grip. It still feels really good through the carousel. That wasn't perfect, but the fact that, this fixed setup is still hanging tough and feels perfectly drivable is actually quite surprising. Yeah, that's perfectly stable. Not even a question. Not even a hint of instability from the rear. Still messing up the braking there, but still on for a good lap. I don't think that was the best of lines through the carousel. That was pretty slow. Another moment. For me, it's the braking. It's the only question mark that the setup is asking me. And I don't have the answer. I'm going to keep working with it. That was lap 7, so we have 3 laps to go. I suppose a portion of the test is to see, like, okay, how quickly can you get to grips with the setup? Maybe that's a part of the test. There are a lot of variables here that would be very hard to control. For example, the track itself. We're doing 10 laps each. With the setup, I'm familiar with Road America. So I do think that is something that I can say, like, all right, I've already practiced this week, but also I'm very familiar with the circuit, familiar with the car as well. But if you're not, this would be a little bit harder to compare to, because naturally you're going to get better. And of course, I'm sure I will get better as well, but yeah, the braking is what is holding me back right now. Another variable is if you're always racing the fixed setup. You are not going to be bothered at all by driving the fixed setup. You'll be very used to it. This isn't bad though. Like, I think overall the setup again is very stable. And it's, I mean, It's got a lot of grip, even through here. So I don't have any complaints about the setup. I honestly think you can be very, very quick with this setup. Perfectly flat. And again, struggling with the braking, but that was user error, I'm pretty sure. All right, so this is gonna be a 2:03.0, barely. And that'll conclude lap 8, lap 9, lap 8. So 2 more. A little bit harder initially on the brakes, which I think helped us rotate the car once we were able to trail it. We were going to correct speed once we reached the apex. Then going up the hill, just kind of mess it up just a little bit. This is looking good. The fact that the car, again, isn't losing any performance throughout any of this is exciting to see. Slow the car down, grab the apex, power out. Not as good of a run. Alright, lost the 10th in those last couple of corners. Almost gained it back. We'll cross the line with a 2:01. So another improvement. And we have one last lap to get it done to see how fast can the fixed setup really be. We have 3 laps of fuel remaining, so the weight on board is relatively light. I've already messed up turn 1. That's okay. And we've messed up the next corner as well. Gained a 10th on our previous lap. Do the carousel. Can we lock those gains in? Nope, we're gonna run wide. So this entire lap just wasn't an improvement. Unfortunately, I've just overextended in too many cases. There you have it. So it's going to be a 2:01.579 for the fixed setup. Let's go ahead and load one of our paid setups. All right, so as we head out with the paid setup, one of the main things we're looking at here is raw pace, but also, again, just controllability of the car. How quickly can we get up to speed and feel comfortable with the car? Some of the corners that were flat out, were they easily flat out here with the paid setup? I mean, are we getting both better control and better pace? It would be hard to imagine something handling better than the fixed setup, just because the fixed setup was shockingly good. We have 10 laps to find out. So in this instance, for some reason, I just didn't feel comfortable giving out the setup shop name that I am using for this test. Mainly, I guess, because I just didn't want to give any advertising, nor do I want to say, like, this setup shop is the one that I prefer. Because if you go and you purchase from this setup shop that I'm using, maybe you don't like it. And maybe there's one that's out there, a different shop that fits you better. I tend to go back and forth between a couple shops, but this is one that I'm using for right now that I have used for the past few weeks, especially for this car. Again, there's just so many different approaches to setups. I just didn't want to recommend one and, yeah, be responsible for that, I suppose. We're going to go ahead and begin our first time lap to setup shop. The very first thing that immediately stands out is, well, this setup is going to be a little bit more trimmed out. I mean, we were much quicker in the straight line there and almost lost it already. I don't know how much of that is the setup versus the, I think I dropped the left rear onto the dirt while accelerating. So, I already had a moment, and it's only lap 1. Again, even with that, you see we're gaining time down the straight. Alright, so we're ending lap 1. We've already had a moment, so I kind of took it easy the rest of the lap. We want to make sure that the tires come up to temperature the correct way. And we'll go ahead and try it again, but this is going to be a very slow first lap, of course. A 2:05.5. But again, because we're so much faster in a straight line, that would indicate to us that we just have less wing on the car. And in turn, you're likely going to have less stability. So, I mean, that's one thing to consider. Oftentimes, setup shops are going to put out a setup that is going to have less aero. In turn, you know, we're just gaining time comparatively. But then once we get to some of these faster corners, especially the kink, we're going to struggle with stability, I'm sure. Like, it's not going to be as easy to drive. Yeah, that corner does not feel as flat as it did in the fixed setup. Alright, so only on lap 2 here, we're going to go ahead and be within 9/10 of a second of that fixed setup lap. So a 202.7. You can see we lost a 1/10. But by the time we reach the next braking zone, we're probably going to be equal. And there we are. I was watching the timing too much, but anyways. This lap looks pretty good so far. Now for the carousel. Oh, I mean, you can just... I can hear the tires. They're complaining, and oh my goodness. The rear wanting to come around, but we're able to keep it in check. All right, now only a 1/4 of a second down coming through the final couple of corners. And again, losing time through the corner. But then onto the main straight, we'll gain that back and more. So yeah, this one's going to be a 1/4 of a second off, a 202.1. And I believe that is our 3rd timed lap. That was a good braking and turn in and exit. Everything about that was pretty smooth. Same through here. Dipped too much. Damn it. So oftentimes what you'll find with setups like these, especially ones that are pretty trimmed out, is that they kind of, the car does the work for you in a lot of these corners. What you want to do is position the car, get the car to start to rotate, and then once it starts to rotate, you don't have to do as much. So like if you're coming from a setup that seems to require a lot of input with the wheel, with these trimmed out setups, nowhere near as much input is needed at times. Like the kink or some of these other corners where, you know, you're going to be on the limit of the grip and there's not a lot of, you know, rear downforce built into the setup. But again, another lap has gone by. That was a 202.1. Would like to just be ahead, not equal, heading into this braking zone. I do find that the braking, though, does seem to be more consistent. I don't know if that's a fluke, if I've just gotten better, or if it is a setup thing. I'm still lifting in some of these areas that maybe would be susceptible to the rear stepping out. I did invalidate just a moment ago, but this one will be an improvement. So it took us a few laps to get comfortable, but we have improved. It's not going to count per se, but it's 201.8. Only took us 5 laps. And then you can see, of course, just looking at the delta, it is quite apparent that we were struggling to get the grip and the rotation and the stability that I need through the corners, but all of that time being lost, we just gained on the straights, and that was a common theme here with this setup. Alright, so fast forward another lap. That was a 202.1. What was that, lap 6? Complete. Not our best work on that lap, but I think we just got a little over-eager. Started to make mistakes by just overdriving. Just very easy to do when you have the delta up above your face, and you just see it's turning green, and it's like, let's just keep going, drive it in deeper, brake a little later, and well, now you've screwed up your lap by getting too confident. We're off to a really good start here. Heavy on the brakes, get it turned in, and get out of the corner. I think we ran a bit wide on exit, and that's what held us back. Now the delta is still comparing to the fixed setup because my fastest lap so far wasn't valid. I'm losing time, I think, due to being slightly uncomfortable in some of these high-speed corners. And now through the carousel, a good enough exit for me. We still lost about a tenth, maybe even more. Very important corner, the kink. Handled just fine. So once you get used to it, it handles like a dream. You see there's a lot of time to be gained, especially at the higher end of the speed. The straight line speed at least. And now we're putting the finishing touches on this lap. Can we improve? Again with the lifts. Through the final corner. Doing everything I can there to get it into the apex. And we're going to come across the line. Again, a small improvement. And a valid one at that. It is a 201.803. Okay, kept that flat mostly. Thank you. 5 laps of fuel. It's plenty, sir. Thank you very much. This is where we lost quite a bit of time last lap. It's all coming together. It's starting to click. Took me a while, I think, with both setups. Whoa. That was scary. It goes without saying, through the kink, you don't want to have the rear step out on you and have like what we call like a flat spin or something of the sort. That is one of the worst places to do it, especially if you do it in front of a crowd of people. It makes you feel terrible. Of course, ruin a wonderful lap on the final corner. I do believe this gives us 2 laps to go. So let's see what we can do. Another small improvement at 201.775. Now we know where the time is. Another good run. Plenty of grip, but you can definitely feel the rear wants to slide out. And now again through the kink. Wow. That's a bit sketchy. And that wasn't too bad. There's more time, I'm sure. But we'll go ahead and cross the line with a 201.5 is what it will be. And we've got one last lap to see what we can do with this setup. I always mess up these last laps. That's okay. We'll go ahead and head back to the garage and let's debrief. Alright, so the test is complete. Now, it wasn't very scientific, it wasn't a perfect test by any means, but it's a test that we complete every single day when we hop into our rigs. Mainly, you have a setup that you like, you're going to go ahead and do about 10 or so laps, and then you're like, alright, let's try the other setup. And then you do another 10 or so laps, and you decide, which one do you want to continue with. In this case, it was a fixed setup and a paid setup. The fixed setup is like a one-size-fits-all. It wants to be balanced and good to go at many different tracks. And of course, the paid setup is very much focused on getting the most performance on this exact car, track, and weather combination. The main differences in lap time you can see, just looking at the comparison here, was mainly lap 2 is the one that stuck out to me the most. I do believe we made some mistakes, but lap 2, of course, with the fixed setup, was 1.3 seconds slower than the paid setup. Now, when I compared the two setups numerically and just looked at them without giving any information away on that paid setup, the main differences were the fixed setup did have pretty much a standard, basic, risk-free, unoptimized ride height and rear wing. So it was higher off the ground, and the rear wing setting was a higher percentage. So those factors, of course, would mean that overall you're going to have a little bit more drag, a little less, glued to the ground feeling. And also, one thing that I was struggling with was the braking with the fixed setup. And I noticed while looking at the two setups that the ABS setting of the fixed setup was lower than the paid setup. So the paid setup had more ABS assistance than the fixed setup. And I should have known that before. Had I known that, maybe we have more speed out of the fixed setup, as I was struggling with the braking especially. However, one of the biggest differences that we need to consider when we are picking setups is how they race. Obviously, the fixed setup being very stable and rather quick is going to struggle against a equally paced driver with the paid setup, just because the paid setup is going to be much quicker in a straight line. And that's where it counts. When you are battling with somebody and you're trying to defend or trying to overtake them, the best chance that you're going to have is getting some sort of overlap heading into a braking zone and preventing that overlap if you can, if you're defending. I saw with the fixed setup we were losing about a tenth down some of these main straights, and that's a very big difference. Just 1/10, and that's without slipstream. So if a trailing driver has that trimmed paid setup and they are following you, they're going to gain maybe even 2/10 on you instead. With that being said, if you are the trailing driver with that fixed setup following a paid setup that is trimmed out, you may not even notice the slipstream effect in the first place, because again, that difference in the straight line speed will basically be negated. It all depends as well on your driver comfort zone. I did find that the paid setup was much more difficult to get along with. That is not a bad thing, of course, because there's more potential, I feel, in that paid setup, because it does more for you. The car does more rotation on its own. However, if you're going to be crashing all the time and the setup is going to be too difficult to drive, then maybe you want to stick with the more baseline, basic, easier to drive setup, so that way you can push more. So these are all factors that you have to consider. My ultimate conclusion is that I would recommend a setup shop, even if it's just for a month or two, because the main reason for me to have a setup shop, have a subscription to setups in the first place, is because, I mean, they give a lot of information. The setup itself gives quite a good idea of what they were looking to do. In this case, lower ride height, lower rear wing, the preload was different, the preload was higher, ABS being different, traction control being different, things of that nature. You just take a quick look at it, you understand what the car is trying to do, what its strengths are, and then you go out there and you compete knowing that you have one of the best setups that is taking advantage of the strengths of the car and the characteristics of the track. Another feature, of course, is that I can go and look at their statistics or their lap times, their telemetry, and see what exactly are they doing that I'm not doing, or what am I supposed to be doing, which is maybe leading to some of these difficulties that I'm having with the handling. Also, it does allow me to drive the car of the week. I have all of the GT3s. I bounce around from them just like everybody else does as well. It's up to you. Obviously, the fixed setup, dude, you could be fast as hell with the fixed setup. The reason why the paid setup was quicker for me versus the fixed setup, it was very marginal, but it came down to me. So it's up to you, basically. That's what I'm trying to get at here. So anyways, as a conclusion here, just let me know, of course, if there's anything that you guys would like to know a little bit more. I definitely don't mind comparing multiple setup shops, comparing different conditions for these setups. For example, I know that iRacing may have some setups for specific tracks. You know, they have, of course, like a Daytona, a Le Mans setup, maybe a low downforce, a medium downforce, and a Nürburgring set even. So comparing even those kind of specialized iRacing setups, it wouldn't be a big problem for me to try those out as well. But yeah, just let me know if you guys want to see any other tests, or if there are any parameters that you would like me to install here. And I do appreciate you guys checking it out. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you around.